Raise your hand if you're having trouble picturing 2025. I have had plans and I've started working on nesting, and then some things changed. So I shifted gears. I made a new plan. I wrote new notes for this video, and then plans changed again. And at this point, I don't even know if I can trust what I'm going to share with you will actually happen, but I want to attempt to share my plans for 2025, including my maternity leave, like when I want to start and end, what that's going to look like, my plans for this YouTube channel, my plans for writing and publishing going forward, specifically my current working project, the Butter Book, which you've probably heard me talk about if you've seen any of my other videos. And it's been an entire year since we outlined it live on this channel in October of 2023. Anyway, we'll talk about that. And then I also have just this huge unexpected announcement to share that's been affecting all my other plans. So let's start by talking about that. The huge news is we bought a house and we're moving in 3 weeks or less by the time you see this video. And if it feels spontaneous to you, it's because it kind of is. We've wanted to move for a long time, but I think in both our heads it was just gonna be an after baby gets here thing. Like, babies don't need their own room for a while. We could make this house work for a bit longer. And I've been doing all kinds of things to just nest and make the house cozy and just get ready for a baby here in this house. But everybody we talked to, it seems like, was saying, you know, it's so much easier to move before baby gets here rather than after. So if you're planning to do it, you should do it before. And when we finally kind of got serious about it and started looking at the calendar, we realized that if you factor in like closing time and all the other real estate holdups and just how long it typically takes to close, that we had a very, very, very limited window of time to find a house beforehand before it would be too late, because baby girl is due to get here basically around Christmas. And of course, babies can come early too. So we kind of had to factor in a few extra weeks, like just in case, and just kind of work our way back. And when we were looking at that calendar, we're like, okay, wow, we'd have to close by this date. So then we'd have to do this by this date and this by this date and this by this date. And we look at the calendar and we realize that we basically only had 2 weeks to find our dream house. We're like, okay, that's cool. So this will be when we look, and then we're going to stop looking by this date, and then we'll pick it up again in probably February or something like that if we don't find anything. And this is where the story gets crazy. We started praying about how impossible it felt, right? And we set up some kind of like quick places to look at houses. We had looked 2 weeks before that. Nothing looked good. We just weren't finding anything that was what we were looking for and in our budget and all that goodness. So Saturday, it wasn't going well when we first started, and we're like, okay, this is probably not gonna happen. But then we found a house that we're like, wow, this is really, really nice. It's checking all our boxes. That same day, the price dropped drastically. So much so that our real estate agent thought it was a typo. And we're like, whoa, this is crazy. Like, maybe we should look into it. So we literally put an offer in the next day, signed the papers the next day. We're moving. And this was only 3 days ago, because today's Wednesday when I'm recording this. So things are moving really fast. And the wild thing is that closing is in just 3 weeks. And we find out tomorrow if potentially they will move the closing date up even sooner. My mind is officially blown. I've had some very emotional moments about this because, like I said, it's changing all my plans. And that's what I really want to talk to you about today, and just kind of share all these big, ambitious goals that I had for the last, 2 months of, I don't know, I guess time before baby girl gets here, kid number 2. But it was just such a wild answer to prayer that God would bring us a house that, again, checks all our boxes and is brought way down in price, and then miraculously they can get us in super fast so that we do have that time to settle in and adjust and get used to the new house and kind of build my nest again. Because I was joking with my husband. I'm like, so basically I was nesting, you know, and then now it's gonna get ripped apart and then we're gonna put it back together again. It'll be fine. It'll be good. But as you can imagine, moving is an insane amount of mental and physical energy. I'm not going to be lifting anything. Well, I'm trying not to lift anything. I'm trying to take it easy, but I've definitely been just completely shifted to focusing on this move and making lists to pack, and, you know, actually getting rid of stuff around the house, going through all my clothes again, like we talked about in that video, I think just 2 weeks ago, where I was like, do you ever just hold on to clothes for a decade and you're like, why do I have this? But that leads perfectly to maternity leave. So let's talk about kind of my thoughts on when I'm going to start and end, and just kind of what that's going to look like while I'm gone. How I'm hoping to set up my business for success, or at least my plans that I was going to do. I don't know if they'll happen now, but I'm going to share them anyway. I'm just going to process it out loud with you and share what I'm thinking and what might happen and hold it very loosely. So as far as the timeline and the start date, the long story short is my maternity leave is starting now. Like right now, when this video goes live. The last few days, it's been really hard to come to this decision because obviously I don't want to just completely give up my creative work. I love what I do. And I had, like I said, all these big ambitious goals for my YouTube channel and for like finishing the butter book. And we're going to talk about that, I promise. But it occurred to me yesterday, actually, that if I was working a typical full-time job and I was doing all this creative work in my downtime on the side, like on the lunch hour or at night or whatever, then I would absolutely take a break and step back, because moving takes a massive amount of focus, right? And being a mom is literally having a full-time job. It's a lot of work and it's 24/7. There's no off time. So it occurred to me, like, my work time each day is literally this 2-hour window or less when my son is napping. And I'm cramming all of the stuff that I used to do in like an 8-hour plus work day into that tiny little chunk of time. It's very similar to what it was like when I used to work full-time and try to do my entrepreneurial stuff on the side. It's exactly the same, where sometimes you just don't have time. And now, like, the lighting is changing, so I don't know if you can see these deep circles under my eyes, but I am so tired all the time because I have this pregnancy insomnia going on at night that a lot of times I just kind of want to nap when my son naps too, and then that time is just completely gone. So of course I don't have time or energy to keep up, and of course I'm feeling burnt out. And like, I know it's so obvious, like I see what you're seeing. It's just that I also hate it, and I had to go through a bit of a grieving process of being like, well, something's got to go, and I cannot give up growing this baby, and I cannot ignore the move because that would be really stupid. And I'm not going to like ignore my son, because being a mom is priority number one, and my family comes first before work. Work is really a side hustle, and that's okay. So yeah, it feels like it's so obvious I have to let some things go. Yeah, it's inevitable that something's gonna fall through the cracks, and that's okay. That's life. I think that happens in all kinds of seasons, not just in pregnancy or in moving. Like, we've all been there, right? But I really wanted to get intentional and kind of try to choose what falls through the cracks, if that makes sense. And even before moving came into the picture, if I'm being brutally honest, I knew that I was already coming to this point. Like, I could feel myself sort of kind of pulling inward. It's sort of like this weird protective instinct to kind of step back from the world. I can't explain it. It's really odd. I've already had that strong instinct that something was gonna have to go, but I was kind of fighting it and being like, no, I'll get it done somehow. What I'm picturing for the rest of this year is probably a very strong focus on moving and getting ready for the baby, and tiny little pockets of time to maybe do some of the ambitious goals that I'm going to share in this video. But before I get to that, I should also really quick touch on when I'm thinking to come back, because this is the other really odd thing that I thought I should probably bring up, which is I think it might be a really long maternity leave. In the US, we typically have, I've seen 6-week maternity leaves and I've seen 12. I feel like the 12 or the 3-month maternity leave is probably the most common in the US, I think, but it's not always paid, so it really depends on what people can afford. And last time, 3 months is what I aimed for, and I kind of feel like in some ways I creatively needed to come back sooner, but in other ways I came back to the full workload too soon. That sounds complicated, but let me try to explain. So creatively, I remember I couldn't do anything at first, right? It was just complete overwhelm. It's a culture shock when you're a first-time mom. But right around maybe 5 or 6 weeks, I did start writing again. And I vividly remember it was because I just needed to find that bit of me again that was just me and had nothing to do with being a mom. Because when you have a newborn, like, everything revolves around being a mom, and it's sort of like an identity shift that you almost, this is going to sound weird, but you almost lose who you are and you have to kind of re-find yourself again. Let me know if that makes sense. It sounds cheesy, but it really is just about meeting this new person. You don't just meet a new baby, you kind of meet your new self. And then I wanted to find my way back to some parts of me, like the creative side, that I didn't want to let go of. Does that make sense? So creatively, I think it was really important for me to come back for my mental health. I really enjoyed writing and I missed it, and that was really beneficial. But all the other stuff and just having a heavy workload, that I wasn't really as ready for as I thought. And this is gonna sound really funny, but I think one of the biggest factors in when I was truly ready to come back to work and felt like my energy started to come back and get a little bit back to where it used to be was around the 5 or 6 month mark. And that is funny enough because that's when typically babies start having more of a schedule. And I'm such a type A personality. I like having a plan and a schedule and knowing what to expect. So when the predictability in my life started to come back, because newborns are so unpredictable, then it was like, oh, okay, I can do this. It sounds so dumb, but it was a game changer for me. And then I also think that if I do a much better job of taking care of myself in the 4th trimester, the postpartum season. And if mental health goes better and sleep goes better and just everything goes better, then I'll also probably not have as many health issues to deal with, and that won't be sidetracking me as well. It's very up in the air. I don't want to assume it's gonna go perfectly. Sometimes things happen. Like last time, I had to have a C-section. I did not want that, and I do not want that this time either, but I'm trying to be more flexible and give myself a wider range of time if I need it. So I could come back sooner, maybe if it goes well. But I have a feeling with a toddler who's getting close to not napping anymore, and then a newborn that won't be on any sort of real schedule for a long time, that I might just need 6 months. All that to say, you might not see me until like June 2025, but you might see me sooner than that because, again, of my fun, crazy plans. So let's talk about what you can expect here on YouTube as far as like videos between right now and June 2025. Again, before the move, my plan was to kind of set myself up for success by still doing the 6-month maternity leave, but pre-filming content and all these fun videos that were they could kind of be posted at any time that I could then sort of slow drip throughout the beginning of 2025, in theory. I had these grand plans, you guys. I really was excited about this huge list of video ideas. I wanted to record them throughout November, work on editing them in November and December, put them up on Patreon for like 2 months early access, and then start sharing them in 2025 so that you'd have videos even though I was gone because they'd already be done and all I'd have to do is press publish. And that would have been something I should have started on a little sooner if I really wanted to get that done, because I'm not sure anymore if I'll have time for that. Oh, and on top of that, then there's the vlog series where I was writing the butter book and I only wrote the first half, so there's still the second half to write. And that especially bums me out because I really wanted to have a complete first draft series to show you the full scope of what that looks like. Well, not exactly real time, but you know, vlog style. And that particular video series was going to be in November. It obviously includes writing a book, and then I was somehow going to do all these other videos for 2025 on top of that. And I don't know exactly how I thought all that was going to happen, but reality has sunk in because these next 3 weeks are probably going to be dedicated to moving. And then that's going to bring us right up to the holidays, and then settling into the house is going to take some time and effort. And all of this moving and unpacking and whatnot is going to be extremely exhausting, even if I wasn't pregnant. So recovering from that. And then there's being a full-time mom. That takes a lot of energy. And on top of that, I'll basically be right up to the last month of pregnancy, which is hard to do any work anyway, even if all this wasn't going on. And then there's Christmas, and then there's postpartum. And it's just like, I don't know where my big plans were ever going to fit. Well, it would have been this little window of time before the last month of pregnancy, but now that's very filled up. All that to say, for YouTube, you might not get any content from this video until June, or maybe if we get lucky, you will get some random surprises from past Bethany. I really don't know. Editing videos takes a long time, but if I could just do the barest bit of vlogging and finish writing the butter book, that would probably be my dream scenario, and then I would somehow edit that video for you down the road, maybe? I don't know. Let's talk about the butter book because I'm having the most trouble picturing this. Just between us, I really wanted this book to be done by now. I wanted it to be published by now because, like I said, we outlined in October 2023 and it's now October 2024 when I'm recording this. At the very least, I really wanted to have that first draft finished by the end of September, like I talked about in the vlog series when I set all that up. And I'm a really good example of somebody who puts too much on their plate, and then I have reality checks. So learn from me and don't do do what I do. But at the same time, it does keep me moving to set these crazy deadlines. So I'm not going to say I regret it. I think I'm happy that I did start and write half a book. I just really wish that I could somehow find time to write the second half of the book. Writing takes emotional energy and moving does too. And so moving has been wildly emotional. I just don't know if I'm gonna have anything to spare for writing, and that's okay. Like in the past, I would have pushed myself, and I have learned from experience, learned the hard way that that doesn't get you very far. That actually makes everything so much harder down the road. There's always consequences. I don't know why we do this to ourselves. Like I've heard of authors, I've heard stories where, you know, their career is doing great, but their home life is falling apart, or their health is failing, or they just don't even like creating anymore because it's just gotten to such a bad point of burnout. And I've gone through some burnout, so I can actually say it backfires when you push yourself too hard. It really backfires because you go into this place where you're like, I don't even want this anymore. I don't even want to touch this story. I'm not enjoying this anymore. And it just really ruins it going forward. It makes it hard to keep going in this career. So I think what I'm realizing is that we need seasons of rest. And I'm not going to call postpartum restful exactly, but it is kind of like a winter season for my business. And I want to give it like some other names, like peaceful and intentional and stable, like a winter season where you do step back. You know what I mean? If writing fits under those intentions and it aligns with those goals, then I'll do it. But if it doesn't, that's okay too. So here's to this new season and being unafraid of the unknowns going into 2025. If you're feeling similar to me, we can do this, we've got this. I'm still holding out hope that I might surprise both of us by getting something fun done that I can share with you out of the blue in the next 6 months. But if you don't hear from me until June, now you know why. Thank you in advance for every book that you read while I'm gone, and every time that you tell your friends, like, you have to read this, because I really, really appreciate that. It helps a lot more than you know. And I just hope you guys also have an amazing 2025, and I'll see you next year.